Okay. Awfully sorry about that. When I turned it on, it was in the private mode. So I yacked for 10 minutes and none of you could hear me.
It was a good yak.
It was a good yak, though. And nobody's here. And are you reading that nobody's here? Are you finding me?
I am getting on right now.
All right, let's see. Okay, well, somebody's here. Maybe it's you.
Maybe it's me.
All right. Well, if I know I'm in the right place, I'm just gonna go ahead with what I was yakking about before for a good 10 minutes to nobody. I'm Mark, coming to you from Baker's Green Acres. Today is the 28th. It's Jill's birthday. We decided to stay home and do this tonight. Thought about going out to dinner, but then, the food we have here is just so much better, so we just decided not to. And it's not particularly a nice night. It's kind of cool, but the good thing is there's no mosquitoes, so we're in good shape. Okay, well, this is what I was yakking about for a couple of minutes, and I don't subject, although we should talk about it. I made a video earlier in the week, and the subject of the video was fortify your position. Fortify your position. So what I'm referring to is, let's say that your job is to stand a post on a position and you're securing an area. This would be kind of a military scenario. And when you first get to that position, there's nothing there but a tree. And you get behind that tree. So that's your position, and you're behind that tree. That gives you a little bit of cover. Well, while you're waiting there and nothing's happening, you see this rock over here, pull that over a little closer. You see that branch over there, pull that up there in front, put it on that rock. All right, can you quiet that dog down, please? So what you're doing is you're making your position better. And as time goes by, you may dig out some of the dirt underneath you, so you're lower down, and you present less of a target for your adversaries. You're fortifying your position. But this applies to everything, not just a firefight, let's say. It could apply to, let's say you have a maintenance shop, which I know a lot about this because I was a maintenance troop in the Air Force. When you have downtime, you procure other equipment that you might need for your process, whatever it is that you're going to do. You make your area where you hang your uniforms up, you make it better than it was. If you have an office where you take care of all your files of all the stuff that you're doing, you make those files better. You are constantly making your position cleaner, drier, more comfortable, more effective. I was out of the aviation world, so things have to be really effective. I mean, we don't do that preparation after we've left the ground and get to 30,000 feet. We do all that stuff before. So, okay, how do we apply this to what we're doing in farming? Okay, and the other day when I made this video, and if you haven't seen it and you want to, you can just,
I posted it just before.
All right, well,
it's on here.
Jill's posted it on YouTube, and yep. She's done a really nice job of putting a front on it and a back on it, and they're really doing a nice job with the material that I give them. I really have to give them a lot of credit for it. Really looking pretty good. This video had to do with one of the processes that I do on this farm, and it's I milk one cow. I have several cows. I have at least three. A cow being a bovine female that has had a calf. That's a cow. You know, if she hasn't had a calf, then you don't call her a heifer. So I have 3 cows, and I don't milk them all at once. I got them going to have them staggered, but right now I'm just milking 1 cow. All right, and that's one of the processes that I do. And when you think about that, oh, I'm going to milk a cow, it seems like pretty easy. Well, there's a lot of steps that go into it. You have to set aside, about 30 minutes a day to do that, maybe even a little more, depending on how far you're going to process that milk once you get it from your cow. You got to have a place to milk her. You have to have something to feed her while you're milking her. I guess you don't, but we always have. We give them a handful of some sweet feed, or I give them some bread, just to entice her in. Because my cows are out, and then they come up just to get milked. Right? They're way at the back of my property right now. I could actually show you. From where I'm sitting, I can see my cows, and they are. Okay. Disconnected and reconnected. Some of that's not going to work, but I happen to know how far away that is, and it's about 625 yards away, right? And that's where they are. And then they come up to get milked. So there's a bunch of different things that you need. You got to have a feed source. You got to have a place to keep the cows when they're not getting milked. There's a bunch of things. You got to have the equipment to milk them. Of course, you can just milk them like this. You have to have something to milk them into. You have to have something to put that milk in and strain that milk maybe. Some people choose to pasteurize the milk. I don't do that. And then what do you do with the milk then? Do you just put it in the fridge to drink it? Well, you're getting several gallons of milk a day, and that's a lot of milk unless you get a lot of kids to feed. What do you do with it? So there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and there's a lot of planning. And once you have the bare bones, which is probably where I started. I bought a cow from a friend of mine. It had just calved, and we started milking her like this. And then somebody said, oh, I know there's a milking machine. It used to belong to so-and-so's grandpa. And so we got that. I had never seen one. I got it, wired it in. It came on, started making vacuum pressure. I plugged it into the milk pot, they call it, and voila, I put it up under the cow, and whoa, actually, we were pulling milk out of the cow. And then I talked around to different people. The guys at Brown Dairy Equipment gave me some pointers on how to use the equipment and stuff. Before you knew it, I had, I think, 4 cows, and I was doing a milk share program, and we were supplying quite a few people with milk, and the learning curve on it was steep because we ruined a lot of milk, and we had cows that got mastitis because we didn't really know how to treat them at first, and there was a lot of things that we needed to learn. Anyway, in fortifying your position, once I built a place where I was going to milk every day, I knew that was going to be my first stop in the morning. I built that area, and I wanted it to be a place where I could get in the right frame of mind for doing productive things on this farmstead. Days that go by when you don't really get anything done, they're frustrating days. You always want to be able to get something productive done. You want to make a gain. So in fortifying that position, I did things like wiring in the pump. Instead of plugging it in and pulling the plug on it, I wired it in so it's got a switch box there. It's nice and neat. I can switch it on. It comes on. And that, to me, that shows a little bit of, professionalism and attention to detail. Then we have all the products that we use there, paper towels. We have our cleaning stuff right there, and it stays there. We have the appropriate hooks here and there for hanging up the milk claw on, I brought a little reel in there and use it as a table, so I don't put stuff on the ground. I'm actually putting it on a table. It's just a reel. It's nothing special. And then I brought a chair in there that I have a place to sit down while I'm watching her milk. And let's see, I put some lights up. I put the lights up behind me, facing down on an angle, so they light her up. In the wintertime, when we're milking in the morning, it's not very light out, so you need lights. And I put them in from both angles. If they're directly behind me, then I'm going to make a shadow when I'm trying to hook her up. So I did a lot of things like that to fortify my position, right? And the example carries on to everything. Some of the other processes that we do, I'll just, there's so many of them. Whether it's the greenhouse, whether it's the composting area, whether it's spreading compost, whether it's preparing feed for the pigs, whether it's planting the fields for the pigs, fencing the pigs. I do a lot of fencing. Every one of those processes, I try to improve it every time I do it. And a good example for my fencing process is I have a place where I keep all my fencing stuff. And in my mind, I like to keep that stuff separate from my mechanics tools. I don't want them in the same area because then you just have a cluster of stuff. So the area where I milk, I said, no, I'm going to keep all the fencing stuff right here. So I have 3 rolls of fence there ready to go. I have all my electric fence stuff. I have my come along. I have my post pounder. I have my fudge packer, we call it. It's a heavy bar that we pack holes. All that kind of stuff. I have a bucket of staples there. I keep a fencing plier there, or 2 of them. So you see what I'm saying? So as we're going and doing our thing on a daily basis, we're getting stronger. We don't want to get weaker, And here's an example of getting weaker, of tearing down your position instead of fortifying your position. I mean, there are times when you want to tear down your position. When let's say you move ahead, you don't want somebody coming up behind you and taking your position. So you will try and destroy that position if you need to, if you don't plan on falling back to it. In the farming world, I don't think we don't use explosives very much, so we can rule that out. Yeah, so, an example of ruining a position would be, and I battle this all the time because I have 6 sons, and when they are learning maintenance, a lot of times they will use something and then they will leave it right there, But I've got enough kids that have gone through the house, so I know if I'm looking for something and I can't find it, I think, what did I have so-and-so doing, and where was he doing it? And I go over there, and sure enough, there are the tools that he was using. So you kind of want to think about that, and when you're doing a process, you want to put all those tools back so they're right there when you need to pick it up the next day. Right? And all this stuff it might sound a little rudimentary, like sweeping up the floor when you're done. So when you go back to your work area, you're walking into an area that's clean, not an area that's just a disaster area and you've got to clean it before you can work in it. Okay, so fortify these techniques, any of these concepts, when you find yourself doing, embrace it. Say, wow, I just fortified my position. I just made this process easier, cleaner, drier, and more effective by doing something small at the end of it. All right? Okay. So even doing this conversation, does this make my position stronger or weaker? I would say it makes it stronger because you ask me questions, I have to reiterate, I have to iterate what the answer is. And you ever notice when you teach something, you actually learn it better. You actually get a deeper insight into how it works. So anyway, I don't want to rant too much. We've been going for a few minutes here. So I'm Mark. I'm your host, coming to you from Baker's Green Acres. As you can see, the mosquitoes are not too bad tonight. It's a little on the chilly side, and we have that feeling that that summer is waning, right? You have that feeling. We have corn in the garden. We're harvesting of the farm right around now, and a lot of stuff is going in jars. You know, it's just a really neat time to be on the farm.
Yeah, we're gonna have a video up.
Yep.
By the end of the week.
Okay, Jill's making sauerkraut and kimchi. We have a brand new batch of puppies, and you may be saying, that son of a gun, he's just abusing that poor dog. And I'm sorry about that, and I would say the same thing probably. We really didn't want her to get pregnant this time, and we did our best to keep them apart, and it was just one door got left open for a couple seconds while somebody ran back in the house to get something. We were all in the van leaving, and it happened. It was quick. So, but now we're going to get on a good schedule, and I actually have a, you know, if the questions come up about Great Pyrenees dogs and guardian dogs in general, I have a lot of insight into how to keep them apart now. A lot of insight on that. I've also gained a lot of insight on septic systems for the last couple of weeks, which is not something that I really wanted to learn about. I kind of had an idea how they work, but now I have an intimate idea how they work. So, life is going along here. We're enjoying ourselves. We're eating good, and we're the next big thing, I think, is going to be Harvest Gathering, which is the 20th of next month. That is Earthworks Harvest Gathering. It's a music festival. And our part of that is we bring a lot of animals there and just set up a little petting zoo for people to divert to when they need a rest from all the music and stuff. It's a real neat festival. It's right here in Lake City. So if you're interested in that, I think you should check into it. It's a 3-day affair. We get there Friday. We do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. A lot of good food, a lot of good music, good clean time. It's a great time. Really enjoy myself there. So, okay, a little housekeeping. Homestead Hog Harvest is going to be November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. If you'd like to participate in that, you can check our website. I'm a little short on time, so I'm not going to go into it. But we're going to start with live pigs. We're going to finish up with prosciuttos and bacons and sausages and things like that. So it's a really comprehensive class, 3-day class, where you learn how to take a pig and turn it into the finished products. And we touch on a lot of things, but we give you a place to start, actually. And we recommend a bunch of books and things like this, and this is how we did it. Let's see, we've set a date for Homestead Hog Harvest on the road, and that's going to be at Shady Grove Farm in the UP, and that is what date, Jill? September?
No,
I mean,
believe we
October.
said- yeah, I'm trying to get to my
All right,
calendar.
Jill's looking for
October 18, 19, 20.
October 18, 19, and 20th. Okay, and if you'd like to find out more about that, you can contact us through bakersgreenacres.com, or you can contact the hosting farm, which is going to be Shady Grove in the UP, and you can find him on Facebook, Shady Grove UP. Okay? All right, let's get to some questions. I had some beauties this week.
Paul's here today.
Okay,
and he's
Paul's
got one
here.
For you.
Okay, Paul's got a question?
Yep,
Good.
yep.
And I'd like to ask you all, if you have questions during the week, if you could possibly wait until Wednesday night, because if you text me a question and I have to stop and text it, I can't really give you a good answer. I like to answer questions like this, all right? I don't do this too well. So if you'd wait till Wednesday, that'd be great. But, I mean, if it's pressing, call my phone, all right? And talk to my ear, and I will talk to your ear with my mouth, all right? I'm not going to do the texting thing. Okay, let's go. Let's go. If you have questions tonight, please put them in all caps so Jill knows that it's a question. Okay, I'm ready to go.
All right. He has 30 piglets that are being raised as feeders on 5 acres. How big would you make the paddocks? How big would you make the paddocks, and how long would you leave them on each paddock? He has a 1-ton feeder that's accessible 24/7. He's planting forage. He doesn't want to do harm.
This is Paul. How deep we've gone into this with you before, Paul. But I'll go into it for everybody else too. All right. First of all, if you put pigs on a pasture, they are going to dig it. That's what pigs do. All right. The notion that you can put them out on grass, at least for me, I mean, there's always going to be somebody on one of these sites that's going to say, well, we did it. Or a certain kind of pig won't dig. I don't know what kind of pig that is. But anyway, the pigs that I have, which are Mangalitsa and Mangalitsa Cross, and the cross is large black and Tamworth, they dig. And every other pig that I've ever had, they live to dig. As soon as they can get in ground that's soft, they like to get into it with their nose. But that's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. If you're going to plant a field, the most effective way to plant a field is to turn everything down, turn it completely under so it's all just brown, all just dirt. You're not seeing a bunch of vines and stuff hanging up. And then plant into that. That's the best way. If you leave, what did he say? How many acres did he say he had?
He has them on 5 acres.
Oh, 5 acres. That's a big chunk. And 30 pigs. You don't need 5 acres to do that, Paul.
How big is your field out
That's
here total?
like an acre and a quarter, I think.
Total?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
5 acres is a good chunk. You could. I mean, you definitely could. The problem you're going to wind up with is you're not going to get a complete opening up of that ground. So here's what I've got going. And I'm not saying this is the way to do it, but I like the results I get with this. So I've got 300 long and 100 deep. And then I've got that broken into 3 pieces. And this has been a project that, it's sort of like a work in progress, and I've had really good success with it. So you asked, when do you move them? I move mine when the field that they're on no longer requires any machine work. That means the pigs have gone through it to the point where I can just go in there and plant, right? I have to make a couple passes on with foot power to put my seeds out, and then I'll make one pass with the tractor and a harrow behind it, just to put the seeds down, just to push them down into the ground a little bit. And one of the videos that I made recently, I tried something else. Instead of using a harrow, I used my compost spreader, which is a barrel spreader. So it's actually sort of like a land roller, and it's got a bunch of holes in it, and I can fill that barrel with compost. I can put a yard of compost in it, and it's pretty heavy. And I was able to go over it twice and dump 2 yards of compost. And that not only pushed the seeds down, it covered them with compost. So I'm adding compost to my field, and that's a whole nother thing. But it seemed to work pretty good, and it really leveled things out. So I moved the pigs when the field that they were on was cleared off, and then one of the other fields of the 3 was up high enough that I felt I'm going to get a good gain here, If it's only up this high, I wouldn't move them over. I'd leave them on bare dirt before I'd move them over. So where I am right now on that particular grow area is I had moved them over to, it's about the 3rd or 4th time that I've seeded in Sudan grass, because it sounds really cool to me. And the pictures in the catalogs look really cool. But it doesn't really look cool around here when it comes up. It comes up and it only comes up about 4 feet, and it's kind of scraggly looking, and it just doesn't thrive. So I turned them in on that because I wanted them to take it off. But there was a lot of weed in there, weed material. They don't know the difference between weeds and Sudan grass, but they ate everything. They cleared it off. The field that they're going on to is forage radishes. And the other day I made a video and I pulled some of these radishes out. And they were about that long, but they're a little on the skinny side. They will get like this. And so I'm going to put them over on that field, but I look at the weather. And yesterday was going to be sunny all day, and we had rain the night before. Today was sunny all day, and tomorrow's sunny all day, and Friday's sunny all day. So if I leave them on bare dirt for a couple more days, it's not exactly bare, but there's not much. I'm going to get a ton of growth over there, so I'm going to wait. And then as soon as I move them over there, I'm going to be on the field that they're in right now, and I'm going to be planting my fall crops, what works for me in the fall. So if you've got 5 acres that you're going to dedicate to them, let's say you broke it in threes. That's a lot of acreage. I don't know if 30 pigs would ever clear that down so that it would be easy for you to get in there and easily plant it. And here's why. If I've got about 15 pigs on 100 by 100, they will take everything off that field. Everything. Every blade of grass. Even if it's stuff they hate. After a while, they'll say, oh, well, I might as well eat it. You know, that's all he's going to give us. And so they will. They'll take everything. But if you have them on a big area, they're going to take the stuff that they like, and then they're just going to keep cruising around, and as soon as something pops up, then they'll take that. But they'll turn their nose up at stuff. Cows are the same way. You got to treat animals the same as you do your children at the dinner table. They'll say, well, I'm not eating this. And then you say, oh, well, then obviously you want beets for breakfast, because if you don't eat them at dinner, then you're getting them before you get Cocoa Puffs in the morning. So you got to kind of train your animals. This is what you're getting, and until it's gone, you don't get anything else. Otherwise, they're going to manipulate you. I have friends that raise pigs, and they can hardly move around their farms because their pigs are screaming at them all the time because they want hog chow or they want corn. They're not going to eat just hay. They want the good stuff, or what they think is the good stuff. My pigs do a little of that, but I don't respond to them, so they don't get trained to scream at me and think that they're going to get something all the time. So if I were you, here's how I operate is if I was in this career field, the career field that I'm in right now, and I knew that there was somebody out there that's doing something I want to do and they're having success with it, that's the guy that I'm going to ask. That's the guy that I'm going to imitate what he's doing. All right? You can always do it your way, you know, and maybe you'll discover something, but maybe you'll have a bunch of failures. But if you concentrated on a smaller area, like build your pens, look at mine. It's 300 long, it's 100 deep, and it's worked really well. I would advise you to look at some of those videos because I'm really liking the way this turned out. And this is over the course of 3 or 4 years that we've put this area together, and it's working out really well. Okay, I am going to make a video. It will probably be Saturday, and that's when I move them over to the field radishes, and you'll be able to see. I'll show everything how that's all set up. So if you can hang out until, it'll probably be posted Monday or Tuesday, something like that. Or go back and look at old videos of the grow area. Did I cover the things that he wanted to know?
I think so.
Did he want to know what to plant?
Nope.
Okay.
Didn't ask that question.
If you didn't ask it, I won't go into it.
If
But
you
you
want to
know,
know, ask.
we're operating this system here, and it is in the midst of an environment that changes as the season changes. So the stuff I plant in the spring will not necessarily be the stuff I plant in the fall. I mean, it won't be the same because it doesn't, field peas don't do well in the fall. And, they're not going to overwinter and things like that. So I have some things that I've used that work good, and then other things that, like Sudan grass, I wish it would work because it looks cool and it's African, but it just doesn't want to work here. And I've tried several different techniques of putting it in the ground, and it just doesn't want to work here in this environment. Maybe I need to check around with some people because I know it does work, but it just hasn't worked for me. And the things that do work for me, purple top turnips work really well. Field radishes or daikon radishes or fodder radishes, they call them different things. And then rye. Rye is one of my favorite things to plant for a forage crop or a cover crop. It's cheap, and it comes out of the ground, and it really covers everything, and it kind of chokes out everything else, and it makes you look good. I mean, people see, wow, look at that field, bright green, it'll overwinter. It's good stuff.
All right. He has a kind of a follow-up question, and then I've got a question from Mike. He wonders if you worry about soil erosion, and how is your soil health?
Good questions. Soil erosion first. The field that I picked was a field that we picked where we originally were going to grow produce. So if you look at the aerial photograph of our place, I think on Google it shows just these strips. And what I did was I planned on having a 6-foot wide bed and then mow in between there a 6-foot strip of grass. I'd seen somebody do that before, and I really liked it. And it worked out pretty good for a time, but then we wanted to be able to, we discovered that hogs were very beneficial to the soil life. So we kind of abandoned that because, they were going to tear up the sod that was in between. They were going to eat it. So we just went to all dirt. And then so we picked that area because it was flat and it would be a good area to do produce on. I didn't do it on a hillside. And with pigs, I wouldn't do it on a hillside because you will have erosion issues. I do have a field that's really quite steep, and I plant it, the pigs go on it, they clear it off, and then they come off because they did create quite a bit of erosion on that, and that's not something that I wanted to see. If we left them on there, then a lot of rocks would be showing and stuff. So I would recommend picking an area that is going to be flat. You don't want a bunch of flowage going off of it. So let's talk about soil health in hogs. What pigs do is they dig, and you might think, oh, that's bad. No, that's good. If you plant a carrot, let's say, and it goes down from the top of the soil, it goes down 10 inches. When that pig starts eating that carrot, he's going to follow it all the way to the tip. So he's gone down 10 inches, and he's, digging with his nose, and the dirt's flying everywhere, and he gets that, and then he moves over to another one, and, the hole that he just dug, he fills in. So you have a lot of topsoil going on the bottom and a lot of bottom soil going on the top, and it's constantly getting turned over like that. And while that's going on, your pig is manuring back into that hole, which puts a lot of bacteria down in the hole, and then he covers that up. So you're bacteriaizing your soil in a very effective way, and plus you're getting that soil turned over all the time. So don't see it as a bad thing. Don't say, oh, the pigs ruined that field. No, when you look at the fields that I have that are my grow fields, specifically designed for pigs, they're nice and flat. The soil is good to pick up and smell. Smells like the forest floor because it's thick with bacteria. So bacteria in the soil is a good thing because not to get too deep into this, but your bacteria are like little tiny fish, and then there's barracudas that are coming through, and those are the protozoas, and they're eating the bacteria, and then they manure out the bacteria after it's been digested through the protozoa, and that is building blocks of soil. It's a very necessary piece of the soil. The bacteria needs organic material to eat. So when we have a compost pile, it's a bunch of wood chips, let's say, or manure. Your manure would be the gut bacteria from whatever animal that we're getting the manure from. So that's our starter bacteria. And then we feed it. We feed it, brown materials and green materials, and that's the food for the bacteria to eat. And when the bacteria is really eating, it makes heat. And the compost pile, you break it open, and all this steam comes out, and it's a beautiful thing. It smells great and everything. So hogs on your pasture are a good thing, and they're going to lead to extraordinary pasture health, and not the other way around. I mean, some people would argue with me because they say, "Oh, I put hogs out on my pasture and they ruined it." Well, when you put hogs on a field, it's no longer a hay field. You're not going to cut hay off it anymore. It's something that you're going to have to continually plant. So when we talk about pastured pigs, and I don't want to be too dogmatic on this because I've seen, like for instance, out at Joel Salatin's place. I recommend his books highly. Joel Salatin, he's a farmer down in Swoop, Virginia. They will put pigs in an area that they are not going to farm because they can't. It's too wooded, it's too wet, it's too uneven. And they will leave them in that area, and his rule of thumb is he'll fence it off, he'll put a ton of feed in the feeder, and when that feed is gone, they're moving them. So they'll move the feeder first to the next place they're going to put the pigs. They'll fill the feeder, then they take the fences down, the pigs go right to the feeder, and then they build the fences around where the pig's new place is. And his philosophy is he wants to disturb that area. I think he refers to it as riparian area. I'm not exactly sure. He wants that area disturbed, and then other plant life comes up. This is where I first started to question whether it's fair for us to call certain plants weeds, because it devalues them. But if I have a corn stalk come up, right, that's going to ear out, and then I have a lamb's quarter come up that it's going to get this thick at the bottom and have probably 20 pounds of material on it, is it right to call one a weed and one a plant? If you're a pig and you look at it, you don't say, well, that's a weed, I'm not going to eat it. No, they'll eat the lamb's quarter probably first, and it will nourish their bodies, and it will build pork. It'll make pork chops for you. So as far as field health, you will build your health. Your hog fields are what I like to hear referred to. I'm not sure who started this. Maybe I did. I don't really remember. But they're solar harvesters. So you have these plants out there. They're harvesting this sunlight that's coming down that you don't pay for. They're harvesting the rain. So can I get real excited about a sunny day? Oh yeah, I can. Can I get real excited about a rainy evening, preceded by a sunny morning? Oh yeah, I can get real excited about that because it equals forage. And when you've got a field that's 10,000 square feet and it's already, covered, and, your bulbs are growing, they're stretching, all they really need is water and a little sun. You can practically hear that stuff grow this time of the year. So I can get pretty excited about that. And yeah, the health of that field is going to it's going to increase and increase and increase. You'll notice if you have a bunch of pigs on, let's say, a patch, and then at first they're digging it, they're manuring it, and it's kind of nice. But if you leave them in there too long, and let's say it gets muddy, and then it gets muddy again, and then you move them off to something, that soil, that environment never is quite right again for a long time. It takes time for it to come back. But if you're having the pigs on it for a while until they clear all the forage off, and then you move them, no harm done. You replant it, it grows back. You never let it get too gross. It shouldn't be gross at all. My pigs, they get a little muddy from the wallow that I make for them in each one of the pen. There really isn't. When they manure on top, and then they dig stuff over it, the bacteria in the mist seeks food, so it's never a stinky place. You could go out into my pig field right now, and I don't feed hog chow. I don't recommend that you guys feed hog chow either. You don't need to. Hog chow makes your pigs really stink bad. But you could go out there and you'd be hard pressed, unless you got in the pen and got down close to the pigs, to smell anything that's not just the grass that's around the pen and the forage that's in the pen. Not my neighbors, actually, but the factory farms around here, they spread manure in it. They really stink up the neighborhood bad. So there you go. Pigs are good on fields. You just have to apply them, properly in the right state of mind. When you see them digging, all that digging that they're doing is digging you don't have to do in order to plant your forages in there. Okay. I don't want to take up too much time.
Yep, I've got Mike's question for you.
Okay, Mike. Is this Mike Finster?
Yep.
All right.
He says, I think moles are tearing up my fields bad. Any suggestions to reduce or repair the damage?
Yeah. Have you seen them to know that they're moles? Because when fields are getting tore up, of course, you're down in Florida, so you might have different species. We have ground squirrels, and people call them gophers, but they're actually Richardson ground squirrels. They look sort of like a chipmunk, only they're not chipmunks. They're ground squirrels. And the way to deal with them is cats. That's the best way to deal with them.
He says no, he hasn't seen any, just mounds everywhere.
Okay, it could be moles then. How big are the holes, Mike? Like a diameter of the hole? Because moles just leave kind of like mounds everywhere they go, like a tubular looking mound where they're going, because they're just beneath the top of the soil, just under the top of the soil. How big is the diameter of the hole? No?
Yes.
Okay, well, for moles, they make these things. My son had those problems.
Quarter size, if any hole at all.
Oh, that is a mole. That is a mole. Okay, well, they make traps, and what it is it's a spear that you pull up, and it cocks it in position, and then you push it down in, and when the mole goes along, it trips it, and then that spear goes down through and gets them. And they do make baits that you can put in there that will kill them as well. But if you did put pigs on that field, that would be the end. The moles would definitely move off. I'm sure of that. I have them here. The only time we ever see any damage is they eat roots. So they are under my apple trees, but they don't seem to have any detrimental effect on anything. They just leave these mounds and we see them after the snow goes, but then shortly after that, they just kind of collapse in, and we don't, the grass grows, and we never see any long-term damage. So that's my experience with moles, Mike. Sorry, that's all I got. There be anything else? You want to play Stump the Dummy here? Go ahead, ask me a question. Ask me a question, anything. I have 8 kids, all right? I've delivered babies. I know how to do that.
So what have you got coming up next on the farm here as far as your work stuff? What are you doing to get ready for winter?
Okay, for getting ready for winter here, we're in northern Michigan. We have to cut wood. We primarily heat with wood in the house. So that's something that has to be done. However, I have that done. So, and then all the things that are in the garden that have to be harvested, that all has to happen too. So all that stuff has to be harvested in and processed and stored for the winter. We're going to butcher quite a bit this fall for some things that we have coming up. So that's coming up. I have some construction projects to do on the house. I got to put siding on the house. And I have a room back here that I need to finish. A lot of this stuff, it's funny because we were eating dinner and the kids had green acres on. And our house sometimes looks like that, where a lot of the effort that we put out in the course of the day goes to the processes that we're doing. Whereas if we lived in town, it would be like, oh, what are you doing today? And it's like, oh, I'm painting, the woodwork in the house. Well, that doesn't really happen here because it's sort of low on the priority list. But since we got out of the commercial end of it, and our goal post is not the dollar sign, our goal post is more like quality of life. We have been doing things that are more in line with creating a nice place to live. Like this year, we put up a pool, and I built a deck on the pool, and we built this. This used to be a greenhouse now that I'm sitting in that was attached to the house. And we have built another greenhouse that's out away from the house. So we put a floor in here with pavers and put a new roof on it, and that's as far as I've got with this. But I'd like to make it a little nicer than that. Actually, we've gotten a lot done this summer. Did quite a bit of fencing, a lot of planting. I got all my hay in. I can talk about that a little bit because I finally, when you have a farm like this, you ponder things a lot. When I first started it, there had been people here before us, obviously. This was settled in 1805, or 1905, I'm sorry. And so it had hay fields that were in grass, and so when I took it over, it was like, well, I guess I got to cut that hay out there. So I had to get some hay equipment. I had never done it, so I had to learn how to do that, and I had a lot of train wrecks along the way. Now I finally have it down to a place where I can pull it off, and just about anything that happens, I'm able to deal with. I got a couple guys out there that when I get really at a place where I'm stuck, I call them, like, help. And there's one guy that's real good about coming when I need help. But cutting hay, all right, this is an example for, it applies to other things, right? My first cutting of hay, I got enough hay to feed my cattle 2 bales a week for enough weeks to get me through to next spring when we get out and we graze. I got enough. So should I take the second cutting? And I'm like back and forth. Yeah, but it's good to have extra, It's like, I need 6 cords of wood to heat the house. Yeah, but I want to have 10, just in case. Well, I could have, got all my hay equipment together, and it takes me about a week to get through cutting and raking and baling and getting it all stored in the barn. I didn't have any more storage space, so it would have been outside. And I could have, and in years past I have. But I've gotten stronger in another area, and that is grazing, right? They call it mob grazing sometimes, but I'll just call it grazing. And it isn't like I have a 10-acre field and I just turn the cows out in the 10-acre field. You can't do that, because if you do, like I was saying before, they'll just eat the stuff they want, and then they'll be like, there's nothing out here to eat. So you give them, I'll give them 15 feet per day. Or like I moved the fences last night, I gave them 50 feet on a field that's probably 400 feet wide, and there's a lot of riparian area in there. That's areas that I can't cut. And so I was able to, just by moving a fence that would take me a half an hour to do, it doesn't cost me any fuel. Actually, I burned off a little fuel doing it, little extra fuel around my midsection. And so instead of cutting the hay, baling it, raking it, drying it, and storing it, I took the cows out to it, and I've got the cows trained to go out to it. And all I have to do is move a temporary fence, and I think I've shown you how that is. I just use what they call a poly wire, and then I have these temporary fences fence posts that you just step in. They have a little pigtail on the top of them, and the fence wire goes through this like this, and then you connect it to a solar fence charger. And instead of spending, the losses making hay are profound when you consider a cow going out there and biting it off, chewing it, swallowing it, and then manuring it back out down there. Not up here where I have to dispose of it or make compost out of it. They manure it out down there, and they fertilize the field down there. And then when I move them, they're off of what they just ate, and they're onto another section. And all I have to do is move them continuously. I can push them into areas that I cannot cut, and there's a lot of food value in there. So I got to the point, it finally hit home last night. It took a while for it to really take root in my being, that it does not make any sense. If I have enough hay in that barn to feed until next spring, let's say I started feeding in November 1st, then it doesn't make any sense to cut more hay to put in there that's going to be left over next year when I go out on pasture. It doesn't make any sense. Or, well, I've got this extra hay, I might as well just throw it to the pig. That doesn't make any sense. So I said, okay, if I'm going to put effort into something, if I'm going to fortify this position, I'm going to fortify grazing. All right, so before it was, well, I can get the cows off the field November 1st because I got plenty of hay. Well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm going to keep them on the field until December 1st, another 4 weeks, because I've got areas that really need the grass eaten down. Now you're going to say, well, during that time of the year, is that grass anymore, or is it just dried up? Well, no, it'll still be green. It's not going to be as tasty, I wouldn't reckon, as the hay is right now, or the grass is right now. But if I cut it and dry it and put it in the barn, is that going to be better than the stuff that's standing out there? I don't think so. And I think for the mental health of the cows, if I have them up at the barn and they're not out walking around and drinking out of the pond and stuff, and they're just up by the barn, locked in, round bale feeders, and just eating round bale, standing there at the round bale feeder all day. I don't think that's good for them. Now, in the wintertime, even if I have it open and they can walk out, they won't, because it's slippery, and they want to stay They want to stay at the barn. They don't really want to venture out into you know, the frozen world out there in the wintertime. So they naturally stay at the barn. So I'm fortifying my grazing position, my my tools that I use to do it, my methods that I use to do it, how I think about it, you know, what vehicle I'm going to use to load my equipment into it to go and do it, what time of day I'm going to do it, and I've got it figured out now. When they come up to get milked, they're milked. It's either me or my daughter that milks them. And then when the milk is processed, I'm loading equipment on the Jeep. I go down, they're not there. I can move fences. And then when they come back down, they're like, hey, he moved the fences for us. There's new stuff. So they're getting, you know, they're getting all their feed needs met. And the way to think about this is, I'm getting right now off my cow. I'm getting 2 gallons of milk a day, which is a lot. But when she's really going, after she first freshens, I'll be getting near 4 gallons of milk. But my steers are putting on a couple of pounds a day. They're putting up a couple of pounds. And it's not weight that they're gaining from dry hay, it's weight that they're gaining from supple grass. You know, even if it's not the supplest grass, it's still better than hay, right? Hay should be like, or for me, I mean, I'm not going to say the right way to do it, but for me, what I want is when I process a beef, which I will be doing here this fall, I want those beef that the last meal that they had was green grass that's rich in chlorophyll and all the good things that is in grass. I don't want them have been eating dry hay for several months. I want their fat, the fat that's in those steers, to be grass fat. I don't want it to be corn fat. I don't want it to be wheat fat. I want it to be grass fat. Okay. So yeah, that's another thing too that I want to see what the interest is on that. You know, we butcher beef for ourselves, and it's definitely a family affair because these are huge animals, and they have to be shot, then brought up to the processing area, take the hoofs off, skin them, and then eviscerate them, and get them cut down the middle in half, and then cut across into quarters or even sixths, because they're so big, and you don't want to be handling a huge chunk like the shoulder off these things is going to be very heavy. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to work that hard. So I'll cut them in sixths instead of fourths, and then we hang that meat in the shop. It's cold by then. In the shop, there'll be no flies or anything like that, and so it'll be cold enough to where we can hang that meat in there for up to 20 days. Up to 20 days. So we'll do one beef, and then when that one's all cut up and in the freezer, then we'll do the other one. And I'm doing this because, okay, it's all right. It's all right. I just gotta show him. This is Obi. He's coming to commentate on things. And this is a good example. Like, if you're gonna raise steers, all right, those would be castrated males, and you're just gonna feed them for meat. That would be what we would call a feeder. Okay, you're gonna need certain amount of equipment to do that, especially if you're gonna graze them. You're gonna need fences. You're gonna need temporary fences. You're gonna need maybe a vehicle to get all your stuff down there, unless you want to walk. I don't know how far it would be. You need a fencer, or maybe a couple of fencers. You need a lot of equipment. Then, to take it to a processor, you need a way to get those steers in a trailer. Okay, and they're not going to just jump in there. You're going to have to, and when they're 1,000 pounders or bigger than that, mine are going to be probably 1,800 pounds, they're not going to want to get in a trailer. They're going to want to stay right out on that field and eat grass. And if you don't like it, they're going to show you what they can do. So then you would need a truck to pull it to the processor. You would need an appointment with the processor. And then you have this magnificent animal. You bring it to the processor and you go, I wonder if they're going to do it the way I wanted to do it. So I don't have to deal with that anxiety because we can do it here. Now, I have a little butcher shop, but that's really not necessary to do it. You could do it in a garage, you could do it in a barn, you could do it under a tree. You really don't need a ton of facility to do it. You need some equipment, but not a ton. I mean, it's doable. So then, when basically we're going to process these beef because we can, all right, because we can. If you don't know how to do it, it's kind of prohibitive because you've got this magnificent animal and then you're going to just hack it up. You don't want to do that. So I want to kind of poll out there. I mean, how many people would want to come and help process a beef? It wouldn't be a one-day affair for sure. The only thing that happens on the first day is shoot, bleed, skin, eviscerate, and then split. And that's the end for the first day. And then the meat has to hang. And there's reasons for that. But in a nutshell, if I shoot, this really happened. I had a cow that one year got stuck in between two trees. And it was my fault. I didn't inventory them when they came to the barn. I should have. And gee, where is what's her name? Went out looking for her, and there she was in between two trees, but she was dead. And I figured it was probably about a week because she was there wasn't a whole. She wasn't standing anymore. She'd collapsed down, and she was going. I couldn't get her out of there, and she went back to the earth all on her own. I didn't have to do anything. She just became back to the earth, right? There was nothing left. And then the coyotes came and got the bones, and that was it. But the point is, when an animal dies, there's enzymes in the animal that start to break it down naturally. So when we shoot a beef, those enzymes take over, and if we keep the temperature regulated to fall temperatures, fall time temperatures, which would be, pretty cold at night, but not above, say, 60 during the day, then that decomposition process begins and the meat becomes, they would call it dry aged, actually. That it starts to break down, and it does a lot for the flavor, and it also does a lot for the toughness of the meat. Now, if you go too far, hey, this tastes rotten. So you got to be careful with that. You can't go too far. They usually hang them for about 10 days at a butcher, but 15
Up to 21
up
for
to
fine
21.
beef, yeah.
So we're able to do that here, and where we're right here, I can go and I can look at it every day. I can smell it every day. I can, inspect it and make sure things are going all right. We shroud them, so we'll take sheets and put them over them, just so if a bird gets in there and poops on them, it won't start some bad reaction. Or if there's a fly inside, usually when it's cold out, flies aren't really fertile, so they're not going to lay eggs. I mean, it can happen, but in the summertime, you would have a mess, with flies, so we don't do this. Like I said, there's a season for everything. Not that I have never butchered a cow in the summer, I have, but that's usually if something went wrong, like a broken leg or something like that, where you didn't want to waste the cow. So you have to, make this happen. So can we hang them for 10 days in the summer? No, they become hamburger. So you kill them, bone them, grind the meat, and the meat goes in the freezer. That's how you have to do it in the summer, but in the fall we don't. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have two
Okay.
questions for you.
Sorry.
Just couldn't get a word in.
Sorry.
Okay, one, are all your hog pens electric or do you go with panels?
No, I don't use panels. I don't use panels, and I don't recommend using panels. Panels are expensive. They don't follow the contour of the ground. What has worked for me is I use woven wire, 39 inches. I use red brand field fence. Field fence, not horse fence, field fence. And you've got to put that up correctly with good stout corner posts and all that. Has to be stretched tight. And then you have to put intermediate fence posts about every 5 paces. The closer, the better. And then wrapped on there real good with some sort of wire that you can, depending what you're going to use for posts. But if you use steel posts, they make a thing that will wrap around it. We do a class on it, and there's videos out there on this YouTube channel that you can see. And then we put electric on the inside of that. I put one strand of electric, 1 foot in off the base of the fence, and 1 foot up off the ground. Okay? A foot up, a foot in. And it's a single wire, and then I put a stubby post about every 6 feet. And all it is, I use a fiberglass post. It's an old water pipe that I drill a hole through and stretch electric wire through. There's 2 gauges of electric wire. There's 0.17 and 0.32. I use the 0.32. That's the thicker stuff. And then we charge that up with a solar-powered fencer or a battery-powered fencer or a plug-in fencer. I prefer the solar power fencer because when we have a power out, I don't even think about it. And these were good fencers. They were $300, and they're the Zabara fencer, about $300 solar, and I've had these things for got to be going on 8 years now. Flawless, very good.
One last question.
Still in the air.
Scott wanted to know, what's the best pumpkin to grow that's least likely to get disease?
Sounds like a trick question. This Clucks and Ducks?
Yeah, he's growing pumpkins and wonders what's the one that's least likely to get disease.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if he's messing with me. No? Yeah. I did say let's play Stump the Dummy. I don't know. I don't know. If you grow the small pumpkins, like the pie pumpkins, they're hard, and they seem to maintain that hardness until they freeze. So the pigs can't get into them. The big ones, they kind of get soft spots on them, and they start to rot, and then the pigs can get into those. Or you can send your kids out there with bats or swords. I'm sure your kids have swords. You go out there with swords or machetes or shotguns and send the kids out there with shotguns. But I don't know which one, Scott, to be honest with you. Our seed supply came from some pumpkins that we got from a lady that grows pumpkins commercially up on the peninsula from us, and she does a whale of a business for Halloween and Thanksgiving, and then we go get them. And I brought home a truckload one time, and we've been saving seeds out of them ever since. So I had a shopping bag full of seeds, and as I was seeding this year, I put them everywhere, because you can't go wrong with a vine that's covering the ground and gonna produce this massive pumpkin on the end. So for me, the bigger the better. One year I got pumpkin seeds off a guy that he said, "Hey, I've got some pumpkin seeds for you," and he pulled out of his freezer a Ziploc bag about that big, and it had like 6 seeds in it, and he said, "These are the thing." So I planted them. How big were those? I mean, we couldn't. You couldn't pick them up. A man could not pick them up. You could pick them up with a front end loader or something. But we wanted one for a family picture. This massive pumpkin. We had to roll it, and it took two guys to roll it up to where we were going to have the picture taken. And then after we were done with it, kids carved it out, and they were getting in it. It was big enough they could get in this pumpkin. So that was a big pumpkin, and that's food. I mean, we could have eaten that pumpkin, but then after the grungy kids were in it, I didn't want to be eating it. Most of what I grow here for the pigs, with the exception of like rye, I can't eat rye. But the forage radishes, I ate 2 or 3 of them today because they're so good. You get this long radish, and I take my pocket knife out and I skin it, and then it's just the nicest tasting meat that you can imagine. It's just very, very sweet and got just a good. It quenches your thirst, and it's full of nutrients, I guess, because it really satisfies you. And a little while later, you'll say, "Boy, I could use another one of those." In the summertime around here while I'm working, if I get the urge to eat something, there's always a cucumber, a tomato, green beans, peas. My raspberries didn't do too good this year. I don't know why.
They will.
You think
They're just behind. They're slow.
Okay.
There's tons of green ones out there.
Okay. Is that it for questions?
That is, and it's 9:20.
And it's 9:20. I've gone over. Can you believe that? Well, I don't mind talking about farming. I wish that all of you could be gathered around a table here and we could just, converse about what we're doing. You know what they need to have? They need to have a thing where you can turn your camera on, and when it's your turn, your picture could come on and you could ask the question, and then we could converse like that. That would be neat. The way we do it with a Zoom call, they're all people that wanted to come in on the call, and they planned ahead of time, and so they all call in, and their pictures are all on there. So when I'm saying stuff, I'm actually looking at the people that I'm talking to, and it's really neat. It's like, after a while, you kind of forget that they're not literally in the room with you, and you're talking, face to face, and it's really neat. As it is right now, it's just me, Jill, and my phone. But, by the way, we have puppies. Oh yeah, I told you we have puppies. And they're going to be ready to go in probably about 4 or 5 weeks from now. So if you need a Great Pyrenees puppy, we got them. And you'll have to travel up to the farm and spend the day with us so you can pick out the one you want. All right, I'm going to cut it off here. It's getting late. It's Mark from Baker's Green Acres. Thanks you all for coming, and hopefully we will see you next week. Bye now. Remember, anyone can farm.